All right, let's dive into the core philosophy of Robert Greene's The Art of Seduction. Now, to be clear, we're not treating this as some kind of how-to guide. Instead, we're going to look at it as a fascinating deep dive into psychological influence, exploring the timeless strategies that some of history's most compelling figures used to master the art of subtle power.
So the whole thing kicks off with an idea that I think we can all relate to, right? Just think back to a time you were head over heels in love. Your ability to think straight just vanishes. You get emotional, maybe a little foolish, and your own needs kind of take a back seat. It's like you're under a spell and you willingly, happily surrender your will.
But here's the big question. What if that enchanting spell, that feeling of being swept away, isn't always an accident? What if it's something that can actually be deliberately crafted? And that question right there is the pivot, taking us from a feeling we all know to the central idea of the book, that this is a learnable and observable art form.
And that gets us to the core idea. See, the book frames seduction not just as a way to find romance, but as the most subtle, and because of that, the most powerful form of influence there is. It's not about forcing anyone to do anything. It's about making others want to do what you wish, often without them even realizing they've been persuaded at all.
Think about it. Every single day, we're just bombarded with people trying to persuade us. Buy this, believe that, vote for this. And what's our natural response? We put up a wall, right? We resist. But seduction is a whole different ballgame. It doesn't argue. It doesn't demand. It works on a much deeper, emotional level, completely bypassing our rational defenses.
Okay, so how does this actually work? Well, the first major principle is all about creating a dream. It's about the power of building this alluring fantasy, something that offers a really compelling escape from the boredom and the harsh realities of everyday life.
And believe it or not, this works on a massive scale. Just look at John F. Kennedy. He deliberately projected this image of Camelot, a new golden age of youth, glamour, and bold adventure. For an America that was dealing with the Cold War, he tapped into this deep national desire for a lost pioneer spirit, and he created this incredibly powerful, almost mythical connection with the public.
This whole process is what the book calls poeticizing your presence. Basically, by keeping a little bit of distance and projecting this appealing image, you encourage people to idealize you. They start to fill in the blanks with their own hopes and desires, and they end up creating this powerful halo effect all around you. Now, for a much more extreme example of creating a fantasy, we have to talk about the Potemkin village. You might have heard the term. It's a historical phrase for an elaborate, impressive, fake front that's built just to hide a much, much less desirable reality.
This is just wild. Back in the 1780s, a Russian statesman named Grigory Potemkin created the ultimate illusion for Catherine the Great's tour of Crimea. I mean, look at this list. He built these elaborate fake villages all along her route. Facades were painted, peasants were dressed in their Sunday best. He even moved entire herds of cattle around at night so it looked like the land was overflowing with life. Catherine wanted to believe in a prosperous new Russia, and Potemkin gave her that dream, turning her trip into a giant, magnificent stage play.
All right, so if the first principle is about creating a fantasy world for someone else to step into, the second one is about making yourself the fantasy. So let's move on to our second principle, mastering ambiguity. This is all about the idea that mystery and contradiction create this fascinating allure that just irresistibly draws people in.
Rudolph Valentino, the silent film star, is the perfect example of this. I mean, look at the contrast here. On one hand, he blended these soft, almost feminine traits. He wore flowing robes, he wooed women slowly and attentively. But underneath it all was this core of masculine power, and even a little hint of danger. This ambiguity made him a total enigma. He was like a blank screen that audiences could project all of their fantasies onto.
Now, Andy Warhol used ambiguity in a completely different way, through social distance. At his famous studio, The Factory, he would just stand off to the side, barely speak, and remain totally inaccessible. He never gave anyone direct approval, and this cool, non-committal presence drove people absolutely crazy. They became desperate for his attention, and it created this intense, almost cult-like devotion all around him.
So, what's the psychology behind all this? The book suggests it's a form of psychological mirroring. As this quote lays out, the theory is that by subtly reflecting some of your target's own qualities, you create this powerful sense of familiarity that just lowers their defenses. And according to the author, that creates the perfect opening for a more direct, decisive move.
So you've created a dream, you've mastered ambiguity, but none of it works without the final piece of the puzzle. And that brings us to our third and final principle, perfecting your timing. Seduction is presented as this strategic game that's all about contrasting the power of incredible patience with the shock of a sudden, bold action.
First, let's look at the slow burn. The Duc de Lauzon orchestrated an absolute masterpiece of patience to seduce the wealthiest woman in France. As you can see here, he spent months just being her friend, talking about poetry and history, and then, and this is the brilliant part, he strategically withdrew. He just stopped visiting. That absence is what made her realize she was in love, and it made her feel that pursuing him was entirely her own idea.
But then, you've got the complete opposite approach. Napoleon Bonaparte knew that a sudden, surprising action can totally overwhelm a person's rational mind. As he said, a bold move shocks people, it excites them, and it leaves absolutely no time for doubt or resistance to creep in.
So really, the mastery of timing isn't about choosing one method over the other. It's all about adaptability. It's about knowing when to be the patient spider, slowly spinning this almost invisible web, and knowing when to be the predator, moving with swift, decisive force.
So, what do we take away from all of this? Well, the argument is that these principles, creating a fantasy, mastering ambiguity, and perfecting your timing, are way more than just a set of tactics you can pull out of a hat.
They're really a lens, a way of looking at the world that lets you see the hidden currents of desire, fantasy, and influence that are constantly flowing all around us, in politics, in marketing, even in our own social lives. Once you start recognizing these patterns, you become so much more aware of the subtle power dynamics that are shaping human behavior every day.
And all of this leaves us with one final, pretty provocative question. Is the art of seduction just a dark art of manipulation? Or is it something more fundamental? A deep, complex language of human desire that has shaped history in ways we rarely even stop to acknowledge? Definitely something to think about.